Our first presenters are Heather Hill and Kevin Oswald from Western University, and their presentation is called Reversing the Gaze, Ontario Library Managers' Perceptions of an Experience with Accommodations for a Disability.
Hello, Sonia. Thank you for having us here today. I'm actually presenting from somewhere a little bit different. This is actually the time period for my accessibility and information class. So my class is all here being a part of the conference today. So thank you again for having us here. And let me get my slides started. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so my name is Heather Hill. I am a white woman with purple hair that's up in a bun. I wear big black glasses and I'm wearing a green tank top and a black onesie today. The research that Kevin and I have been working on is looking at how Ontario public library managers think about accessibility and accommodation. But I think there are a lot of parallels that are relevant to the college and university library setting. So Kevin and I are both out of the Master of Library and Information Science program here at FIMS. I'm an associate professor in the program, and Kevin is a PhD student who's been working with me for quite a few years now. So to center this research, I need to share a little bit about who we are. Kevin is a cisgender white dude who does not have a disability. He comes from the corporate sector and he had a management position. He's done a ton of work to become a fantastic, invested, and knowledgeable ally. And this is a picture of Kevin in sweats. In the front pocket of his sweats are his dog, Lumi, who's a little chihuahua. And Lumi appears in almost all of Kevin's pictures. The picture of me is me standing next to a rusted out dinosaur. I am a cisgender white woman who does not read as disabled, but I spent a childhood underneath an oxygen tent, and my brain is a bit of a hurricane that occasionally I get to sit in the eye of the hurricane. It's kind of calm, but a lot of times it's not. Before I was a professor, I worked in both academic and public libraries, and I have been previously penalized for asking for accommodation in the workplace. So the accommodations process is fraught. It's a negotiation with an unbalanced power dynamic that can happen at two stages. During the initial interview process, when somebody is seeking a job, and after having obtained employment. The power here is heavily skewed towards the organization. Prince refers to this as the predicament of disclosure. On one hand, getting accommodation could reduce stress in the workplace. It can create a clearer understanding of expectations and abilities. It can ensure support and overall like a better mental, physical, healthy work day and experience. But on the other hand, the possibility there is of being stigmatized, being deemed needy or not self-sufficient in our very kind of independent, individualistic culture, and other fun possibilities like being penalized, demoted, fired, or being overlooked for a promotion. The picture that I have here is an old telephone pole with a sign on it that says, "Do you want a future of decency, equality, and real social justice?" So to give you a little background of this research, OOD in 2019 was looking at disabled Canadian academic librarians. And participants were asked if they had ever requested accommodation. 68% of them said no. And of those, 71% feared negative repercussions of disclosure. So most of the LIS literature, and let me describe my picture here. It's a picture of a reference desk with 3 people on the patron side and 2 folks on the staff side of the desk. Most of the LIS literature on the topic of accessibility and disability focuses on these 3 folks in the front, the patrons. It's only been more recently that we're seeing more LIS literature and discussion around what might be happening in the library worker aspect of it, and that there are actually library workers with disabilities. So Kevin and I focused our work using an anti-oppressive framework called Reversing the Gaze from Strega and Brown and Potts and Brown. So it's an anti-oppressive framework where they say we suggest that it is only when we reverse the gaze and investigate and problematize the other side of the equation, that is the behaviors, discourses, and perceptions of the dominant, that we create possibilities for change that are transformative rather than incremental. So if we focus our examination of accommodation and disability within library workplaces just on those who are on the seeking side, looking for accommodation as staff members, we're unintentionally overlooking friction points and complexities faced by those responsible for enacting accommodation, those within a management role. Now, this is not to say that managers have carte blanche to provide anything they want. There are constraints there as well, but that was the lens through which we wanted to approach this research. So what do we do and what are we doing? We're in the process of interviewing public library managers across Ontario. So this research is still ongoing. I believe I have 5 on the slide here, but we're actually 6 interviews into this. So the libraries that we've talked to, folks from large systems, from small systems, from entry-level roles to CEOs to people in human resources and those different types of areas. What are we finding? In the interview, our participants talked about their willingness to be accommodating and their desire to have a more diverse organization. These were folks who saw my call for participation and said, yes, I want to participate in that. I want to talk about that. This is something that I want to spend my time engaging with to help with this research. So this is a very select group that is willing to step out and very vested in this. When these folks talked about interviewing prospective new staff members, they said, hey, this isn't just a legal requirement. Accommodation, like we want to do this. We want to have a more diverse library staff. But while they shared many possibilities, oh, we could give them the questions in advance. Oh, I guess, yeah, they could have a break if they needed to. Oh, yes, maybe we could have like a very detailed schedule or ask, other questions. Those were all possibilities that folks thought of, but they were rarely possibilities that were given in advance. So the onus was really on the prospective staff member to essentially disclose and say, I need X. I need a break. Can I have the questions in advance? Can I have this? And puts them in kind of a very precarious balance as far as how the power dynamic works within an interview. In this quote from one of our participants, they said, I've interviewed many, many people over the years, and I have never had anybody disclose anything during the interview. The disclosures that have come to my attention were always after the person has been offered the job. In fact, I've only had one participant so far say, oh yes, somebody was really forthright and said, this is what I need, X, Y, and Z coming through the interview, and we were able to provide that. A lot of folks are not going to be able to ask for that because to advocate for themselves in that way could possibly put them in jeopardy for the job. So while they shared all of these possibilities for providing accommodation, there were few explicit signals for those interviewees coming into a job interview that this is an organization in which it's safe to disclose. Most job postings include a statement about, we are an equal opportunity employer, but not all organizations mean that. Not all of them stand behind that statement. And if accommodations available in the interview process are not explicitly initiated by the organization, disabled applicants will not know, again, that this is a safe place to talk about that at this stage. Through our discussion with the accommodations processes, because of the different sizes and types of libraries that we have been talking to, we see there is no standard accommodations process or procedures within libraries. Most libraries have a mix of informal and formal accommodations. So informal would be something like, oh, I told my manager that I needed an ergonomic mouse, and they're like, sure, and they got it for me. And there was no paperwork involved. There was no doctor's note. It was just, oh yeah, we can do that. That's no problem. Formal things usually involve paperwork, maybe the HR, maybe a union, and there may be an official alternate work plan developed for that person. How that process worked for the formality was quite different. Some folks had a specific system. As soon as somebody says accommodation, it immediately goes to a third party that then does the assessment. Some had to have a meeting with management, with union, with HR, and between the group, there was a negotiation there. But there were no standards, such that somebody coming into a new library system wouldn't know exactly what to expect the process to be. In some libraries, accommodation was informal right up until the manager gets to the edge of their discretionary funds that they can use. And then it would have to be kicked up to a board or at a higher level within the organization. In others, almost all of it was formalized. So again, there's no pattern here so far. What I'm also seeing, and it's something that I'm not surprised by, it's something that's come up again and again in the literature, is that nice people versus not nice people. And what I mean by this is that in some cases, the flexibility provided within informal accommodation can be affected by the perceived social skills of the disabled staff member, meaning that those with greater neurotypical social skills might have an easier time obtaining informal accommodation. Oh yeah, oh, we're gonna help them out. Yeah, you know, they always go above and beyond for us. So yeah, no, that's fine. We'll do that. We also found a big shift between union versus non-union libraries, and this comes into play for how much support the staff member might have in getting accommodation, but also in how formalized that process is. If they are part of a union, then they can have union representation as part of that accommodation process. If they're non-union, there can be a little bit more, there is quite a bit more variability in how that might work. So there are library organizations and managers who are absolutely supportive and welcoming of disabled library workers. And there are a whole bunch of disabled library workers who want to work in these libraries, but they're wary of disclosure even when they need accommodation. So the goal with the research that Kevin and I are doing is how to connect the two. How do we connect these fantastic managers who are really vested in this to staff members who are like, I can be a great library staff member. I just need to have somebody not freak out if they see I need accommodation. So doing so is going to require extra effort on the part of our organizations, managers and organizations writ large. Being more explicit in their desire to be accommodating could be helpful in relieving the burden from applicants and current staff and help them to identify, oh, it'll be okay here if I bring this up. It's safe for me to do that. And it's not enough to say, this is a safe place. I've seen those buttons, I've seen those stickers, you are safe with me, this is a safe place. It's kind of like the equal opportunity employer thing. People wear that and they don't necessarily mean it. So how can we relieve the burden? Disabled library workers need to see evidence to support this statement. So with that, so far in our research, Kevin and I have three recommendations we'd like to put forward. They all revolve around signaling to connect. So while all libraries say something like this library is an equal opportunity employer, I would ask you to walk with me through the second, slightly more expansive and explicit designation from a different library. The X library is hiring Y to work part-time in public service and project-based roles. We value diverse perspectives, experiences, and differences, and encourage qualified candidates from all backgrounds and positionalities to apply, including IBPOC folks, 2S LGBTQIA plus folks, and persons with disabilities. We are committed to building a diverse team, one that reflects and is representative of the community the X Library serves. If you require specific support to apply for this position, please get in touch and we will work with you to identify the best way to support you. The fulsome language in that description alone would make many folks, I think, feel more comfortable identifying at that stage. So something as simple as the job ad can be a place for employers to signal. The next stage of signaling could happen in the interview process. So in the interview, we recommend, and some of the best practices around accessibility for jobs say, hey, provide the interview questions in advance to everyone, not just those who are seeking it. The job interview does not need to be a pop quiz. Although, and if we think it does, maybe we need to think about why. Not providing the questions in advance seems to come from wanting to know if a candidate can think on their feet. Can you react fastly to a changing environment? But these types of questions prioritize candidates who can provide a quick, fast answer over those who need a moment of space to fully reflect on the problem and the question before answering. A prioritization of quickness over quality. Beyond a statement that candidates can receive accommodation within the interview process, it can be helpful to provide specific examples of possible accommodations to show that the organization has thought about this. If you're somebody who has not asked for accommodation, or you may not know what's possible, can I ask for the questions in advance? I don't know. Is that weird? Can I do this? Would it be possible to have a breakdown of exactly, who, what, and when through this process? Like, if I don't know the norms at the organization, I don't know what's possible for me to ask for. And if we signal that, hey, here are some things that people have asked for before, then it's like, oh, okay, yes, you know what? I would really benefit from this. Our third recommendation is around organizational discourse. So this is the same picture that I had earlier of the reference desk with the 3 folks on the patron side and the 2 library staff members on the other side. And I have 2 white arrows pointing at the staff members. So our last recommendation is developing an inclusive discourse and environment within the organization. So it's unreasonable to expect managers to have an immediate solution for every accommodation need that comes up. That's impossible. Everyone is different. Everyone's needs are different. But being knowledgeable about possible accommodations, being knowledgeable about the types of accommodations that have happened before, being open to various new possibilities and being invested in finding a solution can become such a great start for any organization. So beyond the individual manager, there's a call to actively develop workplace environments where discourse around accessibility and accommodation is the norm. So if I don't want to disclose because I think I'm going to be ostracized at work because they're going to think I'm different, that says something about the accessibility and disability culture and how it affects our culture. So if we can kind of normalize some of this discussion, hey, Heather has a really wonky hip, and occasionally, I'm going to use a mobility aid, but it's not an all the time thing, and nobody cares, then it's no big deal. And so it's this effort to try and make it as no big deal, not to say that everyone has to disclose, but to say that this is an okay place for you to disclose if you want to. So we're looking to foster environments where it's quite normal for folks on the staff side of the desk to talk about accommodations because it's no big deal, but only talk about their needs if they want to. So the work that Kevin and I are doing, and this is back to my positionality picture that Kevin and I put together of the pictures of us. Our work is emphasizing that understanding the perspective of those who hold positions of power is essential to shifting the focus on who is responsible for creating change. We know that managers encounter organizational hurdles and financial uncertainties, but these cannot be obstacles to equity. So these power relations, they need to be acknowledged and they need to be brought to light as part of the process of institutional and cultural transformation. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have some questions.
Hi, Heather. We don't have any questions, but we do have a comment in the chat, which I'll read out. Coral says that it is a US-based resource, so you'll want to ignore any mention of laws, but Ask Jen's list of disabilities and potential accommodations is pretty great. So that is in the chat. There's a link there if anybody wants to check that out. Does anybody else have any questions? We have 6 minutes, so we have plenty of time. Oh, I'm seeing something in the Q&A. Okay, I'm going to read it out, Heather. Our HR has been pushing providing questions 30 minutes in advance, which they say is for accessibility, though I think it has as many potential disadvantages for people as not providing the questions at all. Do you have thoughts on this issue and or suggestions for responding to this kind of policy? And this is from an anonymous attendee.
Thank you for the question. And so my guess, I don't want to impinge on anybody's motives, but it feels to me from this end like, okay, you want questions in advance, but we don't want to give them to you too far in advance. So it's not a pop quiz because you get the questions 5 minutes ahead of time. And it's just like, well, so then we're prioritizing who can speed read through the interview questions in those 30 minutes and not go into a panic of, oh my God, how do I think about these questions? Not that anything is going to be completely unexpected, but I think there is evidence and ability to push back on that and to say like 30 minutes really isn't that long. I mean, if we're talking about a page interview, somebody who it doesn't have a super long, intense interview, perhaps that could be okay. But once we start getting into managerial roles, librarian 1, 2, 3 positions, then we start to see like, we're going to be asking some really involved questions and we want you to be able to answer it your best. I mean, that's where I would like to see the interview come from. So I would push back on that to see if you can get a longer time period or figure out like what's their justification for 30 minutes, because that seems not long at all.
Okay, we have another question from an anonymous attendee that says, how do HR committees balance concerns with advanced questions and Gen AI responses?
Oh, so this is a really good question. I don't actually know the answer to that only because I haven't seen much discussion about it. So I know at the university level, we're seeing particularly undergrads are relying heavily on ChatGPT and other AI generative models for coursework. Given the commodification of education systems, this is actually like, I understand why they're doing it, right? Their goal is the end grade. Job seekers, their goal is the job. I think in writing those responses and having a chance to think about them before the interview happens, you can ask them to elaborate on their response. I think that is perfectly fine because if they've had time to think about how they would answer a question and they respond to the question, oh, can you follow up on that to see if this is something that they have just, thrown together or if it's something that they've actually thought about? Because then you're not getting them on the spot as much, because in theory, they have given you a fulsome response that they've had time to think about.
Great. And we're actually getting a lot of questions, but I think we only have time for one more, unfortunately. So Sarah asks, do you think there's an opportunity to provide alternative types of interviews instead of the traditional interviews, such as on-the-job interviewing instead of the more traditional Q&A format?
I think something like that would be great because I think but with caveats. So there are a lot of folks who would be amazing colleagues and staff members that don't interview well. They're going to be great at the job. They know how to do it, but there's something about the interview format. It's like test anxiety, right? I can do the work. I know what I'm talking about, but there are certain situations where my brain just went, and then it's not working as well. The challenge with that, though, is time. So for most of us, when I was still working in libraries, and I'm pretty sure this is pretty standard anymore, we don't have a lot of time to go through this. So we want to have a standardized process so that we can try to work on some form of objectivity, even though that's impossible, right? To ask different people the same questions so that we're evaluating responses to the same questions. If there's variability within the interview format, how do we make sure that that is an equitable process in how we analyze the information that we're given in the interview process? But also something like that is going to take time. We're going to have prospective employees, maybe job shadowing, which is actually quite common in other professions. But we need to make sure that if we're doing that for a day or however long, that time needs to be compensated. So there are a lot of intricacies to figuring out how that might work that I don't think anybody's got a really good handle on that I've seen so far.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather, for your really insightful presentation and for taking the time to answer questions. We actually do have about 7 more in the Q&A box, so if you have time to answer them via the box, I'm sure that would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, thank you for your time.